What does Peru, evangelism, and CDs all have in common? Let's find out.
When I was living in Peru, we lived in the university. I was 8 years old, and an evangelist came through. He was huge.
This is Mark Galvez, a senior theology major at Southern Adventist University.
Bashed on TV shows, just all that, right? And he was really into that. So he came to the university and scared people into giving their CDs, their DVDs, their flash drives with movies of the world, with music of the world, and he got an enormous pile of just, things that people want to burn, things of the world that we were all gonna burn at the end of the series. And I remember that I remember giving a CD that I had. I think it was a Jay-Z album, and I didn't speak English, but I just liked hearing it. And I was so convicted at the age of 8 to leave the ways of the world, and that I was gonna give this CD and never turn back. And so were so many students in the university. And I give the CD, and Saturday night, they burn this pile in front of everyone. I mean, the entire college came to see this happen, and they sung hymns and everything. And in my young mind, I was just watching this, and I was, just amazed at what was happening. Can you guess what happened 2 weeks later?
Yes. Can you guess what happened a couple of days later? I'll give you 3 seconds. Just 2, for fun. 1, 2, 3.
Around the university, we, I don't know if this happens in Nicaragua, but you have vendors that have 40 movies in one CD, or that have, games in a CD, or, you couldn't download back in the day because the internet was too slow. So people would sell movies on CDs or sell music on CDs. And so they all ran out of movies. They all ran out of music. They had sold all their CDs. Why? Because people, they had just given up out of impulse, after a week of listening to this music all their life, of watching these movies their entire lives. They had given these things, and now that they had been burnt, and now they didn't have the high of spirituality, the high of this evangelistic week was gone. And so after 2 weeks, the suppliers of CDs and of movies ran out of things. And I'm telling you this story because it just reminds me that it's first about revival and then about reformation, never the other way around. That evangelism is supposed to point me to Christ, to show me how to have a relationship with Christ, before telling me what to do and how to act and what to cut. And you can't change someone's life in just 1 week. Maybe it happens. I'm not dismissing that. But for the general population, it requires time.
Evangelism requires time. That's for sure. So before we continue delving into the topic, let's start with some basic definitions. What is evangelism, after all?
Dude, my definition has been shaken so much, man. It's crazy. Growing up in third world countries, as the more underdeveloped a country gets, I feel like the more conservative and legalistic not just evangelism, but the method of spreading the gospel gets. So back then, evangelism, I will answer your question, but back then, evangelism to me was public evangelism. I never knew about the Bible working. I never knew about the preparation towards it. I just knew that when you showed up in church, you would see dragon symbols and why Catholic people are bad, and a lot of pictures of the Pope, right? That was evangelism to me before. Then when I came to the States, I remember seeing promotional ads for evangelism, which I think for Roger Hernandez, and I think it was Everyone Has Problems or something like that. And that to me was evangelism. They told me that was evangelism, and I was like, whoa, why is this? It feels relevant. It doesn't feel right. I mean, it feels right, but it's relevant, So I think evangelism for me is not a public event, but I think it's a powerful private event that manifests itself in a public manner. Meaning, evangelism starts with your devotionals in the morning. Evangelism starts with your relationship with Jesus, and it's then manifested in your workplace. It's then manifested as a church prepares towards a public event.
A public manifestation of a private relationship. That's a great definition. And in just a moment, we continue exploring ideas about evangelism and how to not burn CDs in your next evangelistic campaign. Thank you for listening to Disruptive Adventism. See you in just a bit. You have an idea. You want to tell it to the world, but you don't know where to start. That's where Anchor comes in. They have the tools for you to edit, produce, and record your idea right from your phone or computer. It's the easiest way to reach and grow your audience. They publish for you to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major platforms. And to top it all off, they match you with advertisers so you can earn from your passion and your wonderful idea. So tell me, what are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started and follow your dream. We're back with more Disruptive Adventism. Another story from Mark about evangelism. Let's listen.
I went to preach a doctrinal evangelistic series in Colombia and in Panama, both in Spanish. Colombia was right after my first year of theology. Panama was after my second year. To you as you're doing this as a young person, and as someone that was raised in Latin America, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing as a pastor. And I remember a portion that to me shifted in that moment was after I preached about the Sabbath and how it was changed from Sabbath to Sunday. A lot of facts, a lot of history. This girl came up to me. She was 12 years old, and she told me, Pastor, I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm addicted to cutting myself. And I was 19 years old. I have had history of depression, and there was a time that I tried to kill myself, but I had never gone to that point where I was cutting myself, and she was doing that. And it was crazy to me because I said, did anything in the message speak to you? Just, to test the water. And she said, well, no, but I'm talking to you because you're the pastor. And you're the only young person that I can talk to in this church. And, take this as an example, because she is like cutting herself. She is depressed, but I was up there talking about, the change of the Sunday to Sabbath thing. And that was a shift for me, because the year after that in Panama, I see the same exact problem. All of these old people come up to these series. No disrespect to them, of course, but a lot of them are, I guess, older, and they come up to me and they're like, "Hey, my son, my daughter is outside of the church. Can you please witness to them?" And they think that me as a young person, seeing another young person, I can automatically change them just like that. And I remember talking about Daniel 2 this one night, and they come up to me and they say, could you please, pray for us? Our son is not in the church. Now, I don't think if Daniel chapter 2 was the best message for someone whose kid is not in the church. We prayed and we talked, we fellowshipped. Not once did they mention Daniel 2. And then I went to Asheville, North Carolina. I mean, I've had so many moments in which I've done evangelistic series, and people come up to me with real problems. But they come up to me after the sermon, and during the sermon, it's as if nothing that we've talked about in the presentation was relevant to them as they were going through their situation. That's been my experience, at least.
As Mark has been speaking, I don't know if you've been reflecting on your experience on public evangelism. Do you think that the sermons have touched your heart and not just your mind? How do we get away from this DNA that we have and move forward? Look with hope and change a little bit.
Jose, I'm honestly still new to this evangelistic process and the doctrinal series and all that. From the little that I can tell you, I'll tell you this. 2 months ago, I was preaching in Paris. And if you know anything about Paris, it's one of the most secular cities you'll ever go to. Most of the church members were not Parisians, and almost, not just almost, but all of them were not white. So they were from, say, Martinique, Guadeloupe, Haiti, Rwanda, Burkina Faso, all these other French colonies. And they came with their faith from outside. And I remember that as I tried to make this series, I think if you do have to do a public evangelism, if you have the privilege of doing public evangelism, an event, a format, I think you should try to make it as much as possible with stories. Try to connect, emphasize that Daniel prayed, for example, when you're talking about Daniel chapter 2. And on the change of Sunday to Sabbath, talk about faithfulness, faithful in your job, faithful in your marriage. When we're talking about health, don't talk about it in a you have to kind of sense, but you get to kind of sense. It's about getting relevant and practical. If you do have the honor of doing that, get relevant, say a lot of stories, be yourself. I try to be as funny as possible, and I try to be myself. And most of all, man, talk to people. Don't be weird. I'm tired of evangelists that just come, preach, leave. Come on, man. Like, pray with the people. Talk to the people. Just be with the people. Now, in a first world context, I really don't know if doctrinal evangelism would be the way to go. Even, you and me are, even though I was born in this country, I didn't really grow up here. But as young Adventists, and as people that our parents, were super into this, I think even second generation Latinos are not as excited, say, about doctrinal evangelism. And the change, I think, comes in relevant preaching. And like, instead of doing it about doctrine, I think it should be about real issues. And, going back to the Roger Hernandez series, that to me was, it changed my focus to talk about the problem, to address the problem. And I've seen many other series like that in our Adventist church, but I feel like they're just not as promoted as they should be.
Evangelism is important, and we continue to discuss this after the break, so stay with us. Thank you for tuning in to Disruptive Adventism. We'll see you in just a second. This podcast is brought to you by our supporters on patreon.com and coffee.com. Our supporters are the backbone of the podcast, and we are very thankful for all of you. Your contributions allow us to seek the best ideas and disruptors in the world and bring you podcasts that energize, transform, and change your community. We hope you take courage and join our one-time contributors through coffee.com or our monthly ones on patreon.com. You'll get amazing merch and early access to our unedited interviews and produced podcasts. If you want to contribute, hit the links in the description below. And thank you. We are on our last segment for Disruptive Adventism. I just want to remind you that you can listen to the unedited version of this interview on patreon.com/Disruptive Adventism. As we have been deglossing the idea of evangelism, something that is always on my mind is the idea that we don't allow context to dictate how evangelism looks like everywhere in the world. We just export our practices when they have worked, let it be from the United States or from Latin American countries, but we don't really develop contextual evangelism. So Mark and I talked a little bit about it. Here's what he had to say about that.
This I'm answering you from a perspective of that I'm still trying to answer, not that I have a definitive point of view, but this is an answering process. I think that when you start preaching the story of Jesus, the reaction that comes from people, you shouldn't be able to control it. Of course, unless it goes on against your biblical teaching. I just think that teach the story of Jesus. How do the people take it? Teach them in a manner in which they're able to express themselves. And why I say this is because I think that one of the most restrictive things that we have done as a church has been with music. And so when you allow people to express the beauty of righteousness of faith, when you allow people to express the beauty of faithfulness and the fact that we have a God whom we can pray to, the beauty of that a Savior became one of us and died for us and went to him and is with him interceding for us. I mean, allow people to express that joy the way that they want. We now don't live in a world in which everything is primitive. We live in a world that is interconnected through the things that is in our very pockets right now, our phones. And when you share the gospel in a manner that doesn't lead people into your conclusion, but leads them into their conclusions, if it's the truth, then they'll eventually come to it, right? So another way that we can make sure that it's not a definitive product from America to other cultures is allowing leadership from the local country. A question that I always ask myself: when is it time for missionaries to come back home? When will there ever be a time for missionaries to stop coming to a country? And I think it comes when we delegate power, when we delegate leadership to the people of that continent and of that country.
And what Mark said, delegating power, I think is the most difficult thing. We don't like to delegate. We don't like to let the power go. We like to hold it close to our hearts and close to the things that we can control. But that's the process. That's the process of evangelism. Mark's about to give us a final word, and I hope that as you've been thinking about this process of evangelism, that you understand that it takes different things in different places. Sometimes evangelism is going to work just like it is, a doctrinal series, an event. But somewhere else, it may work differently. And I think we need to be open to work with that. Here we have Mark's final word. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you for listening.
Man, I'm still young. At least I like to think so. I'm not a pastor yet. But as I said before, for me to fall in love with Jesus, for me to come to the decision of studying theology, it took a process. And I encourage everyone to fall in love with the process, whether it be in getting your degree, whether it be as you start your day, whether it be as you're starting a business, or whether it be in a relationship with Christ. Enjoy and love the process. Connect with Jesus, and you'll eventually fall in love with him if you fall in love also with the process.
You've been listening to Disruptive Adventism. We hope that today's topic helped you to think and change something about your practices, about your faith, about your Adventism. If you want to subscribe, make sure to go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be there. And make sure to give us a review if you like what you're listening to. If you want to support, make sure to go to patreon.com/disruptiveadventism. It helps us pay our bills and produce the content that you're listening to. And if you want to socialize, make sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram or on Twitter, and hit us up whenever you need anything. We'll be there to support you. Thank you for listening today. We hope you join us next time. And as always, we invite you to be disruptive.